It's time to explore the world according to Glenn. I'm Kevin Jacobsen. Glenn Close is my favorite actress, and this show is all about exploring the career of one of the finest actors of her generation. Each episode, I'll be joined by a guest as we dive into one of Glenn's movies, TV shows, or stage productions, going chronologically through her career, discussing her performance, and assessing the project itself. And today, we're talking Glenn's performance as the First Lady of the United States in Tim Burton's Mars Attacks.
Time nominee Glenn Close, motherfuckers.
My guest today, I adore chatting with every time. I've been so lucky to have him on my shows pretty much since the beginning. He more recently joined me on my Best Actress series to cover 1962 and 1993. Writer and podcaster at Next Best Picture and Awards Watch. Welcome to the show, Josh Parham.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me back. I always love talking movies and actresses with you.
That's very sweet. Yes. And in a more condensed format here, now that you don't have to watch 5 movies to prepare.
It's a little easier, yeah, especially for this movie.
Yes, exactly. Not a big stretch for you. But before we talk our big movie today, Mars Attacks, would love to know if you have any kind of relationship with Glenn Close overall, if you remember when you first saw her and what you think of her, and if you have a favorite performance.
Well, being the millennial that I am, I do have to say that probably the first time I saw her was 101 Dalmatians. Even though I think 102 Dalmatians I have a little bit stronger memory of just because I was a bit older and I remember that trailer playing in theaters very vividly. But I think the 101 Dalmatians is when I really first saw her. But I will also say that I think the role that I remember seeing her in that I first kind of attached her to in terms of whenever I would see her again, it's like, oh, it's that actress from that. I think it's Air Force One because I loved that movie when I was a kid. I watched it so much. And I think once I got older, I started recognizing her as the vice president from that movie because I was such a big fan of it. So that's another one that was really important to me when I was younger because I like that movie and I think she does make an impact in it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is all the movies that she made around this time that I think a lot of us in our generation really were just like very intrigued by this powerful powerhouse actress, and playing these kind of like, she's playing the first lady here, she's playing the vice president there, like she really does command that authority. But yeah, do you have like a favorite performance overall from her now that you've seen more of her work?
I mean, it's close between Dangerous Liaisons or Fatal Attraction. And I think Fatal Attraction is the one that I prefer just ever so slightly. They're both great at the top for me, but I think Fatal Attraction is the one that I prefer just a smidge more.
Yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong either way.
Yeah.
So
truly.
Yeah. But I'm very excited to have you on for this episode, as I know that you are a huge Tim Burton fan, as I was, and slightly have lessened in my feelings on that over time. But
it's complicated now.
It was very important to, I think, both of us in our cinephilia developing. But yeah, Mars Attacks. This is a movie that was long in the making. It began with a trading card series called Mars Attacks, which debuted in 1962, which had these kind of wild illustrations of Martians attacking Earth. It was kind of like a cult classic sort of series, and Tim Burton was one of those sickos who was fascinated by them. He liked how lurid they were, to use his word. So Jonathan Gems, the screenwriter, wrote the original screenplay in the mid-'80s, which was inspired by the series. And then it wasn't until Tim Burton had that full cachet, the blank check to do whatever he wanted, post Batman, post Beetlejuice, post Martin Landau winning an Oscar for Ed Wood, that he got attached and pushed this project forward. And so the script went through some rewrites by Larry Karaszewski and Scott Alexander, who wrote Ed Wood, and made it less dark, much more of a satire of those silly B-movie sci-fi films of the 50s, which Burton was really into after his time covering that period with Ed Wood. So he assembled a huge all-star cast, including Jack Nicholson, Glenn Close, Annette Bening, Pierce Brosnan, Danny DeVito, Sarah Jessica Parker, Michael J. Fox, Martin Short, Pam Grier. Like, the list just goes on. And also includes some future stars too, like Natalie Portman and Jack Black. And so just one of the most stacked casts probably ever. And he hired Industrial Light and Magic to do the CGI for The Martians, and giving them that very similar look of how they looked in the trading card series. So anyway, for Glenn's role, she's playing Marcia Dale, the First Lady of the United States. Others in the mix for this role included Meryl Streep, Diane Keaton, and Stockard Channing. But Glenn was really on a roll in this time period and had the pedigree and kind of the sensibility that Burton wanted for this. So, all that said, quick synopsis of Mars Attacks. It's a sci-fi comedy satire about a sudden invasion of Martians on Earth, and we follow the fallout of this through multiple perspectives, including President of the United States James Dale, played by Jack Nicholson, his wife Marcia, played by Glenn. They have a daughter, Taffy, played by Natalie Portman. Jack is also playing a casino owner in Nevada, whose wife is Barbara, played by Annette Bening, and she's kind of a hippy-dippy kind of lady and sees the invasion as sort of a good thing, maybe, for mankind. Pierce Brosnan plays a professor who is a guest on the talk show of Sarah Jessica Parker's character. Michael J. Fox is here playing her reporter boyfriend. We also meet this family in Kansas. Jack Black is playing this private in the military. His brother is played by Lucas Haas, who has a close connection with their grandmother, played by Sylvia Sidney. Martin Short is also here as the White House press secretary. Again, huge sprawling cast, Jim Brown to Pam Grier. So anyway, the film leads to the Martians making contact with humans, and at the first interaction, the Martians annihilate the humans, and it just goes from bad to worse from there. So yes, that was a lot, but there's a lot of plot here. Not a whole lot of Glenn, but I think there's still a lot to talk about. So Josh, Tim Burton, very important filmmaker to you, like you said. So would love to know your origin story there, and on Mars Attacks, and on Glenn's performance.
So when you first told me that you were going to be doing this series, my first thought was, that's great, awesome, totally fits, and it's perfect. My second thought was, I have to be here to talk about Mars Attacks because it's a very important movie to me, not just because of Tim Burton necessarily, even though this did start my love for him, but this is a movie that is actually really, really important to me because it literally is the inception point of me kind of becoming a cinephile. Like, I remember watching this film at 6 years old and my parents taking me, and it kind of felt like a special occasion because it was around the holiday season and we were going downtown to see it. And so I was like kind of in this mindset of being really hyped for whatever I was going to see. And I walked at that film being like, I don't know what it is I just saw, but I am completely fascinated by it. And it really started me down the path of like wanting to learn more about movies, learn more about filmmaking, and yeah, became a diehard Burton fan, and it all fans out from there. So Mars Attacks is like one of those cornerstone movies for me that's really, really important, and that's why it means so much to me, because I like wouldn't be talking about movies at all if I hadn't seen that film at 6 years old. So I do find the film to be very fun. I mean, I will admit a lot of this is drenched in nostalgia, so I'm just going to admit that up front, that because I saw it so young and it means so much to me. But I do find the film to be overall entertaining, especially if you do like those movies from the 50s and 60s that Burton's kind of referencing. I find it to be overall entertaining. It definitely has some moments looking back on it now where it's kind of a bit repetitive, I think, but I do find it to be very fun, and I like a lot of the performances, and I think in particular for Glenn Close, she is just really honed in on what the tone of this movie is supposed to be. And I like that she is silly, but she doesn't really play it so broadly, which I think is good for that role. It knows that it's in a very kind of silly movie, but it's not so hyperbolic to feel like it's completely out of place either. It really succeeds on like line deliveries and just the tone that I think is really, really successful. And she's absolutely one of the highlights of the film. Like whenever I think about this movie, I often think about scenes that she is in, and I very much enjoy the presence that she brings to this film.
I love that. Well, actually, I did want to ask before I share my thoughts, just if you had more contextual stuff about Tim Burton overall and how he kind of shaped things, because again, like we share a similarity there.
I mean, yeah, like Tim Burton was one of those filmmakers that like I had multiple biographies of him. Like that's how much I was into him. I had pictures of Tim Burton hanging up on my wall. I remember being devastated when Sleepy Hollow came out and I wasn't allowed to see it because it was R-rated, and I spent the next 2 years like negotiating with my parents to try to bring the age down when I could be allowed to see it, and was very happy when on my 11th birthday I was able to finally see the movie. It was like I said, a 2 long year negotiation with my parents to try to get to see Sleepy Hollow. But yeah, Tim
Wow.
Burton, and you get older and you realize, yeah, this is pretty common that he is a filmmaker that does inspire a lot of people to become into movies. And it makes sense because I think when you're growing up, when you are thinking of like an auteur, he is the perfect definition for like a growing, budding cinephile because it's like easily recognizable what his style is, and it's broadly appealing. You tend to watch it when you are a child anyway. So it makes perfect sense, and it absolutely worked for me. I think that I just fell in love with his entire aesthetic, and I just really was like in the deep end of watching Burton movies and being just absolutely obsessed with him as a filmmaker. And it's why, even though lately not the best filmography, but I can never completely write him off because he is so important to me. Like I really can't undersell how significant my love of Tim Burton was when I was younger, and how much that was responsible for me getting into movies overall. I owe so much to him, even if lately it hasn't been great. He's still incredibly important to me as a filmmaker, and I can never forget that.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case for me too. Definitely something that a lot of us in our generation share as well, is like one of those first directors who had a very identifiable style and a kind of flavor of film that was like, maybe at that age I thought of like, okay, well, you can connect like certain films in a series that are connected, you can connect how certain actors you follow from film to film, but like at this age I felt like Tim Burton was like my awakening of like how a director can be connected through multiple films. That gothic offbeat kind of outcast style was exactly what I was attracted to at that stage in my life, where I felt like a weird kid with weird interests that trended a little darker at times and dealing with life and death and all those things. But so he was really kind of like my guy growing up. And so I don't think Mars Attacks was necessarily part of that initial group of films from him that I was hooked on, but it certainly became one after I had watched the Batmans and Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and Pee-wee just over and over again. And so, yeah, I would definitely remember being drawn in by the look of the Martians here and the kind of over the top campy violence, even without having the context of like what it was sending up. I just thought it was just like a fun, cartoonish little sci-fi movie. Maybe it didn't really linger with me like other films of his, but I just remember having such a great time watching it. So many fun bits, which I'm sure we'll delve into. And so I think, now having more context for what Tim Burton's vision was and giving us this sort of almost political satire at times and a send up of those 50s B movies, I think it really does work. And granted, it does maybe feel a little old fashioned now in its sensibilities. Like, I don't know how much younger generations would appreciate this as much, just because it feels like a very like Gen X sense of humor to me at times. But for me, it's still a really good time. Maybe it's a little overstuffed with characters and plot lines, but it really is the kind of film where like the characters don't really matter all that much. Like, you're just kind of here for the spectacle. You're here to watch humans battling Martians, which is mostly just Martians annihilating humans. But yeah, I just think every set piece is so original and colorful. And I know, like, he wanted to make it like stop motion animation at first for the Martians, but I guess the studio convinced him to do CGI, and that would kind of allow more like a anamorphic lens and just give us that, widescreen type of feel that I think in this case really benefits the film. And it, for me, never gets repetitive, even if there are kind of a lot of similar scenes of just humans kind of pleading and Martians just destroying them. But
Yeah, and what I find also interesting is that, like, first of all, the movie obviously does, as we said, have an appreciation for these kind of B movies, which was also something else I was interested in when I was younger too. I loved older sci-fi horror movies. I used to watch those a
mm-hmm.
lot, and I often credit them with being sort of a gateway for me getting into classic cinema in general, because like I can
Right.
watch Frankenstein in black and white. It's like, oh, that means I can watch Sunset Boulevard, and I can do that at like 8 years old and be okay with it. So I appreciate that this movie absolutely has an appreciation for those older kinds of movies because I love them too. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that kind of cheesy sensibility that comes with them. And I do sort of wish they had gone ahead and done The Martians in stop motion because I think that only would have added to that
Right.
tone. But I know that they've talked about how they wanted, even though it is CG, to kind of give them kind of a bit of a herky-jerky motion to them to kind of evoke stop motion. So I think it's the best they can do with that. But I will admit, stop motion would have been better. But even the decision to shoot it in anamorphic, I find to be strange but funny too, because
Yeah.
Burton is not a filmmaker who shoots in that format. Like it's only
Mm-hmm.
this and Planet of the Apes. They are the only movies that are shot anamorphically, and the fact that one of them is this homage to like the cheapest of sci-fi movies that you can find out
Right.
there, and is shot in the most cinematic format that you can find. I just find to be even more funny to me. It's like a
Yeah.
meta joke about how
Mm-hmm.
prestigious this movie looks, given the subject matter is very, very junky.
Yes, and combining that with all these like huge like Oscar-winning stars in
Yes.
it. That yeah. So, and yeah, the actors are really just clearly having a ball here, getting to play pretty much as over the top as they want. And that includes Glenn. Like she said in an interview, she played a cross between Pat Nixon and Nancy Reagan. And, she definitely has like that Pat Nixon hair. She said it was her own wig that was restyled to be like Pat Nixon. But yeah, it's like that primness, that kind of waspy, tastefully dressed properness that she's clearly having such fun embodying. Like it is kind of a thin character ultimately, where it seems like one of her only real character traits is like just making over the White House to match her very selective kind of style. And then beyond that, like she just wants her husband, the president, to kill the bastards essentially. Like, so it's like she's kind of playing like a cartoon character, but she looks absolutely fabulous doing it. And I think she, much like in these kind of supporting turns I've been talking about with Mary Riley and House of the Spirits, much worse movies than this, but she just eats up every single line that she gets. And to your point, not necessarily going super over the top here, but absolutely knowing the assignment of what Burton is asking of her.
Yeah, it is in every line delivery that I find to be so captivating. Because you're right,
Yeah,
it's not a very big role. It is pretty thin, but that's sort of like how most of these people are in this
right.
movie. It's really not about the characters. We're not watching this movie for that. So you have to make an impact by doing very little. And I find that her like attention to detail with just being obsessed with White House renovations, like who knew that would become very relevant?
Hmm.
So many years later, afterwards of White
Wow.
House
Yeah.
renovations, yeah, I was definitely thinking about that in
Mm-hmm.
terms of that character now. But I love how she, yeah, is just so laser focused on that, but without ever being over the top. And I guess
Yeah.
also just like throwing in references to like past presidents will always tickle me because I was very into
Mm.
presidential like facts when I was younger too. I was a weird child, don't ask. But that also kind of amuses me too, and it's another reason why I think about so many of her lines about, Van Buren China and Eleanor Roosevelt. Like I just find it to be so funny and amusing, and it really makes me laugh every time she's on screen.
Yeah, what does she say? Like Eleanor Roosevelt was too fond of chintz or something.
Yes.
And yeah, very dismissive of Nancy Reagan too. Like she really has done her homework on how she's going to be better than all of these previous first ladies. And
Yes.
I adore her kind of sort of tight ass attitude, even as she's speaking to like her daughter or whatever. Like she just has that kind of like tightness in her that does feel like a little bit of a carryover from Cruella, which she had just played. Just that kind of like I said, like she's not very loose here, but in a way that is ironically like clearly having such fun. So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like she's always on camera. She's always
yes,
playing for
she's
an
always
audience.
performing. Right.
Yes, even if she's like in private. And like
Yes.
another favorite moment of mine that doesn't even include dialogue is when she is talking with the decorator in the White House and then a photographer comes to get her picture and she poses and the decorator's with her and she just subtly pushes him out of the frame. It's like
Yes.
not a big moment, but says a lot about that character and is also very, very funny.
Yeah. Like I said, she just makes the most of every single scene that she's there. Even those like you said, even smaller scenes, or like when she's eating in front of the TV next to Jack Nicholson, and she's just so grossed out by the Martian on screen, and just being like, "I'm not gonna have that thing in our house."
Yes. And that's when they're not going to eat off of Van Buren China. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just wonderful character work from her, and like that's where I like this is kind of a tangent, but I remember Baby Clyde on my Best Actress series talking about Glenn and how she is kind of like a character actress who accidentally became a leading lady
Yeah.
in a sense, and I think in this kind of role you're really seeing that character actress that she could have been if, like, for example, she didn't have Fatal Attraction that totally blew her up as a movie star.
Yeah,
So
it's funny because I find that with this kind of movie in particular, like it's sort of these are all roles that because they're so relatively brief that they could have been portrayed by character actors. But the kind of the joke of the movie is that these small roles are played by big stars and most of them get killed at the end. Like that's also sort of the meta joke that I find to
right.
be amusing too. So yeah, it is sort of character actor work, but utilizing movie star personas to make that giant impression. And I think she does a great job at that. It shows you how she can make so much with so little. Like even a simple thing like a spit take, I think after they blow up Congress, like
Yeah.
even that small moment is still so memorable in my mind just because of her presence on screen. And that really just shows you what she can do with so little material.
Yes, precisely. And I think for me, she is one of the, well, I should say she would be one of the MVPs, even if I wasn't such a huge stan of her. Like, I feel like she is one of the more memorable parts of the film. I think you would probably agree with that. Because cast wise, like, there's so much to choose from here. And just like, I feel like maybe different viewers would key into different storylines because there's just so much going on. Like, I don't know if
Yeah.
you key into one over the other.
I mean, God, there is so much going on, but I do
Yeah.
think it's hard not to be drawn to Jack Nicholson, not just because he's playing two
Yes.
roles, but I just feel like both of those characters are so looming in the story. Like one is literally the president of the United States, and I think also when I was younger, I recognized that, oh, that's the Joker. So like that was probably something that I gravitated towards, but I do think Jack Nicholson. Like I like
Yeah.
his stoic nature of the president that does slip into these very big outbursts, and I find that to be amusing. But also when he plays Art Dale, it's such a or sorry, excuse me, Art Land. Dale is the
Artland.
the
Yeah.
president. Yeah.
Yeah.
When he plays Art Land, I find that character to also be like so sleazy but charismatic weirdly at the same time, and it's just always captivating whenever he's on screen. So yes, he has the benefit of playing multiple characters, but I don't think you can deny just the regular Nicholson persona seeping through that automatically makes you want to watch him.
Yeah. He's very, this is one of his more underappreciated performances, dual performances. Also, I couldn't not see on this rewatch him as the casino owner, I could not stop seeing Mickey Rourke. I just something about the look. Like
Yeah,
now Mickey Rourke.
yeah, the look, a little bit of like that gravelly voice too that he's going
Yes.
for. Like
It was, yeah,
it's so unsettling and sleazy, but perfect for what you need from that character.
totally. Yes. And he kind of wanted it to be in that Doctor Strangelove kind of area. And I also just found this really sweet quote that another quote that Glenn said in an interview about Jack and Tim. She said something about how like Jack wanted Tim Burton to be like his Martin Scorsese to his Robert De Niro
Mm,
at the time,
that
which
is
I think
interesting. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but I just found that actually kind of sweet because you could tell that they have so much fun collaborating together, and I don't know
Yeah.
if they ever work together again after this. I don't think so.
No, I think this was the last one. And I remember reading that Jack Nicholson like didn't even read a script. He just said, Tim Burton is offering me this. I will do it just because I like him.
Exactly.
And I can understand that because I think that Jack Nicholson, for all of his, reputation as being like this great actor, like he is somebody that does have a playful spirit to him. And I think that you can understand why that would be so relatable with Tim Burton, who can dive into some serious subjects, but often will have, that whimsical tone too that's fun to play in. And
Yeah.
I can understand why that would be attractive to Nicholson. And yeah, it makes me sad that they never really became a regular collaborator. I mean, kind of would have preferred it to the other Burton collaboration that we got used to later on. I actually think that might have been a little
Yeah.
bit more fruitful, but yeah, wow, of what could have been. That's so
Mm-hmm.
fascinating to me.
Yeah. It just makes me kind of scroll through the rest of his filmography to think of where he could sort of fit in. But I don't know if Tim Burton had that many like older characters moving forward that
Yeah.
he could really slot into.
Maybe he could have been Albert Finney's role in Big Fish. That would have been interesting.
Oh boy. Wow. I mean, now that
Yeah.
you say that, I'm like, God. Now that
Yeah.
you say it,
I didn't
oof.
even think about
I
it
mean, that
before, but
probably would have
like,
been an Oscar nomination for him,
oh,
to
yeah.
be
I mean,
honest.
that probably is his fourth Oscar right there.
Yeah. And actually, to that point, I remember being quite devastated when Tim Burton did not get like a director nomination for Big Fish at
Yeah.
that time because I felt like, oh, this is kind of like his big Oscar vehicle, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's also the other thing for me is that not only is
Yeah.
Burton responsible for my love of movies, but he's actually kind of responsible even for my entry point into the Oscars because
Wow.
I was into Big Fish and that movie coming out, I remember was the first time I really cued in on Oscar buzz because like, oh, Tim
Hmm.
Burton might get a Best Director prize for something. Let me look into what this is. And that was the first year that I watched the Oscars. So like again, Tim Burton is like so important to me for so many areas of my
Wow.
movie appreciation right now. So like yeah, it's another reason why I can't ever totally dismiss him because he's always been there for very important milestones for me.
Wow. You would not be the man you are today without
I,
Tim Burton. You wouldn't
truly,
be here
like
without Tim Burton.
absolutely. Like I
We would
do
never
not
have met without Tim Burton.
I'm not even joking. Like it really he
Yeah.
really is responsible
That's
for so
crazy.
much of my love of different aspects of movies, even if they're not really connected to one another.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I just kind of want to keep talking about this incredible cast on top of everything. Like, she's kind of far down the list, but I personally really responded to Sylvia Sidney on
Oh yeah.
this rewatch, playing the grandmother role. Like, it's so wild to me that she had this beautiful kind of late career resurgence after being an old Hollywood star. Like, she was in Merrily We Go to Hell in 1932. And here she is with like Jack Black. I'm just like, what a career. It's incredible. But she's so delightful here. The way she's kind of like blissfully in her own world, just like petting her taxidermied cat in the nursing home. And she's always mixing up her grandsons, but ends up being a key role in saving the planet from Martians.
Yes, she's literally like the hero of the movie by the end of it because she's responsible for us winning and defeating them. Yeah, I
Yeah.
absolutely do love her. Obviously, when I saw this movie, would remember her also from Beetlejuice, so that was
Beetlejuice.
another
Yeah.
thing that I remembered from. She was also in the second Omen movie from the 70s. And
Mm.
again, I was into like older horror stuff too, so I remembered her from there. And yeah, I find that she's just delightful. You know, she's so like kind of absent-minded and not of the moment, but that's what makes her all the more charming and endearing. And the fact that she sticks out in that family that is pretty like, you know, antagonistic towards a lot of other people, including the younger son who's played by Lucas Haas, and like I like
Hmm.
their little relationship, you know, grandmother and grandson. So yeah, it's so delightful, and yeah, that music that she's listening to and how she just bops her head to it, it's so wonderful and sweet.
So endearing. And this was ultimately her final film role, feature film role at least. So what a
Yeah.
way to go out. Like the whole sequence that I love the when the Martian ambassador is like wishing to apologize for the misunderstanding earlier and asked to address Congress, which, you know, president thinks is a good idea for some reason, great for the
Yeah.
administration. Truly an insane plan, but they, yeah, go
Yes.
through with it. Also love the sign that the Secret Service puts up being like no applause, no birds,
Yes.
because that was part of the misunderstanding from earlier. And the Martian just completely lays waste to all of Congress, and just the quickness with how things just descend into chaos always cracks me up. But that's where we get that great sort of punchline moment from Sylvia Sidney, just cackling, watching the TV and saying, they blew up Congress. One of my favorite moments.
Yes, that one also sticks out in my mind so much, as does the following meeting that the president has with like his cabinet members talking about what to do. And he has the line, I want the people to know that they still have two out of the three branches of government still working for them, and that ain't bad.
And that ain't bad.
Yeah. Which honestly, right now, I would take two out of three working for us at the moment. Like that seems rather
Listen,
optimistic at this point.
watching this in the year of our Lord 2025, oof.
It's an
It
experience.
was it's quite something. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
definitely like thinking of modern day, like how our administration would handle all this now.
Oof.
And
Honestly,
yeah,
we might welcome it though at this point. Like,
yeah.
might be marginally
But
better considering the circumstances.
yeah, couldn't get any worse than it is now. So
Yeah, but she is representative of so many people that make a lot with a little. Like, I was shocked to later read that like Danny DeVito is only in the movie for like 90 seconds, and he has
yeah,
like
barely there.
top billing too, which is wild.
Hmm.
But even in that very small role, he's another character that I constantly think about. Like I think about him at the craps table when they're watching the announcement, and everybody's glued to the television except him, and he is so excited. He looks up and nobody's paying attention. He's like, "Hey, am I the only one shooting craps here?" He's so funny.
Right. Yeah. Everyone is just having a blast. Even like the smaller roles, like a Michael J. Fox, even who ultimately is out of the film pretty early, gets vaporized pretty early on. Just the way he's so sleazy and is like asking at the press conference if the press can have access to like interviews
Yeah.
for with the Martians. Another thing that's too real, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he does a really good job of capturing like that 90s yuppie,
Yes.
business persona, and I think it also works for him because like for Michael J. Fox at this point, you sort of know him as more of an affable guy, and I like
Hmm.
seeing that kind of persona coming out of him in this movie. Again, like not a ton to do, but it
Hmm.
absolutely sticks out, and he has a very memorable finale. Like that is one of those scenes that really stuck with me when he's reaching out to Sarah Jessica Parker during the chaos, and the next shot is just, her pulling out the hand and then the green skeleton just laying there. Like I always remember that being a very striking image to me when I was younger.
Same for me. I do want to talk about that sequence actually a little more because I absolutely love it when the Martians are making that landing in Nevada, which is like this huge event, like that not only has the military there and these officials, but press and locals. Like Annette Bening's character even comes out too, and I think sort of by that point, I think the film has done a really solid job of setting all the pieces in place before we get to this first big point of conflict. So I love the kind of build up to that, even though it's again like so many different storylines being set up. And I love seeing the Martians themselves and just the huge eyes, the kind of exposed brain with the glass orb around them. Like, obviously, all of this was from the original card series, but I think they still like that holds up really well ultimately, and for as like cheesy 50s as it is. But it's like there's kind of something a little unnerving about them too, which I think is important with these kinds of films. And of course, they seem okay at first, and the ambassador says like he comes in peace, but when that local hippie guy sees this, he releases a dove, which the Martian apparently interprets as a weapon, essentially. And yeah, just vaporizes it with a gun, and it leads to that massacre, which, again, I just love the comedic timing of those sequences of just like you're kind of like waiting with bated breath for something to happen, and then it's just complete and utter destruction. Just
Yeah.
completely laying waste, you know?
Absolutely. I think that the tone of that sequence is played very perfectly. And
Yeah,
even though, yes, the design of the Martians comes from the original trading cards, was a design also featured in other movies. There's an old
yeah,
sci-fi movie called This Island Earth that very famously has monsters that sort of look like that with the big exposed brain. So again,
right.
another movie that I was familiar with when I was younger. So I was like, oh, I understand what this is referencing. And I do think it strikes a very good balance of like being somewhat actually kind of serious just in the destruction, but played in a tone that is still fun and enjoyable to a certain degree. Like, or at least it shows
Right.
peril that is so kind of over the top that you just sort of revel in the destruction that is happening. And it gives you like some comedic moments too, like especially with Jack Black and the rifle misfiring and then, trying to surrender like that. That's actually funny,
Yeah.
but also darkly comedic at the same time. Like it is a little disturbing, but which is, for sickos is the reason why we like it.
Right.
And that is very present throughout that entire sequence of that kind of sick sense of humor that takes pleasure in the over the top destruction that is happening. We all are doing the Sylvia Sidney cackle throughout much of that sequence,
Pretty much.
and that's
Yeah.
why it's very, very fun.
Yeah. It's goofy, but I do think there's elements of it that do feel kind of frightening in the sense that, like, for me, watching some of those sequences really kind of demonstrate how fragile our existence is. Like, if we were faced with this kind of a existential threat, like, I don't have a lot of confidence that we would be prepared for any of that. And
No.
so watching it like that is just like, oh, wow, it could all just go away very quickly. Like, it's bleak, which again, I think that tonal balance works for me. The goofiness, but also like it is a little bit like unnerving at the same time just to see the destruction on that level
Yeah,
so
yeah.
quickly. Yeah.
And it's also unnerving because eventually you get to the point when there really is no further negotiation. I actually think
Right.
that is the most disturbing thing about the movie is that at some point the Martians just don't care. Like no matter what you do, they have the superior technology and they have just decided we're going to eliminate everybody. And you can't offer them anything, you can't bargain at all. It's just these are a group of aliens that have just decided to kill everybody. And there's nothing you
Hmm.
can really do outside of one like lucky miracle that might happen. And that is like for as much of the movie being as silly as it is, that sort of underlining idea is pretty frightening, honestly. Like we are completely ill-equipped to battle this, and it might take
Right.
a miracle, but that's extremely rare, a rare thing to happen. And yeah, that actually is very disturbing to think about.
Yeah. And I think we also, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't really get like a super concrete reason for why they have arrived at this particular time.
No,
Like,
they just show up.
right. And so I think just that sort of ambiguity of like, we never really resolve why they're here, what they want from us, other than just to destroy us. That does make it even more unnerving. And I think I appreciate that from especially a modern perspective, where I think, if this movie were released nowadays, it might be tempted to try to over explain why the aliens are here, you know?
And that feels to me like you are pulling from those older movies. And I think especially if you're like
Exactly.
younger when you're watching them, like even if those old sci-fi movies gave a reason for the aliens invading, as a kid you wouldn't be paying attention. You would just be seeing scary monsters that are on planet Earth and are attacking people. And like that's the only thing that really matters. And I like that Burton in particular kind of has that sensibility in terms of telling the story is that it really is just about this invading force. Like that's the only thing that you care about because that's the only thing that these movies usually cared about, and that's fine. Like I don't need a backstory as to where they come from. I don't need a backstory as to the reason why that song makes their heads explode. Like I'm
Right.
good. All I need to do is like, okay, I get it. You play this song and it causes this reaction, and that's what ends up saving the day. It's incredibly silly, but it works for the movie, and that's all the information that I need.
Absolutely. And I also like again, that political commentary we get of how the president is kind of feckless for a lot of this. Like, he doesn't really know how to handle any of this, and he kind of is defaulting to the idea of like do nothing and just see what happens, which is not particularly great. Like, I don't necessarily need the president to be like kill, kill, kill necessarily, but he just seems very indecisive. And I feel like, isn't there like a hint of the idea that like he's kind of new to the position? I could be making that up, but it,
I was actually wondering about that because obviously I wasn't thinking about this at the time when I first saw it,
yeah,
but now it's like, yeah, I was sort of thinking where he's at politically. He could be new. I was actually also thinking that he could be like a lame duck too.
yeah,
That he's sort of
right.
like kind of he's been in it for so long, he might already be kind of checked out, and maybe he just
Mm-hmm.
is not used to governing with a lot of conviction at the moment.
Right.
Like that was also the other read that I had was that this might be like a second term president who's already
Yeah.
lame ducked and isn't really invested in actually running the country. And now that a crisis has happened, he's like very ill equipped to actually combat it because he's not used to it in all his time as being president.
That's true. Yeah, I think I kind of that felt implied in my mind because of what Glenn is doing in the movie in terms of like
Sure.
doing all the redecorating. But
Yeah,
now we know that we can have a second term president
that's true.
redecorating all he wants and burning the White House down.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but like even she is like much more forceful on this issue than he is.
Yeah.
like they're watching the destruction of what happened in Nevada, and Glenn is clearly stunned by this, and she just deadpans like kick the crap out of them.
I mean, the fact that he even asks her in that room, I think ultimately kind of shows you like, yeah, she's a very important person in this entire operation. And like that's also something that we know, first ladies, there is a history of many of them being influential, one of them maybe even kind of being the secret president, you know?
Mm.
So I do like that he, as the president, does include his wife in the process. And yes, she has that great line, and his reaction too is just like, "Oh God,
Mm.
I can't with this right now." And
Right.
yeah, she's great. I love that dynamic too. I think it works really well.
Yeah, they had never worked together before this, and they
Just
never did
crazy.
again.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'd have a lot of chemistry together. But I just wrote down a lot of really funny sequences for me
Yeah.
that just like gave me a little bit of pause. Like, I remember one sequence where we cut to the Martians on their ship, and one of them isn't wearing clothes except for some kind of like shorts or underwear.
Yeah.
And then I also thought of like how there's this scene with Pierce Brosnan kind of examining a dead Martian and notes that they don't have any genitalia. And so I was like, what exactly are those clothes covering up? Like, it made me question a little bit of like, is this just for the audience's sake? Because we don't want to see like a weird, formless. I don't know. It took me off on
Yeah.
some weird tangents.
I feel like that probably is just yeah, the studio saying, well, if they're not wearing shorts, they look naked, and even though there's nothing there, we can't be
Right.
thinking about what's not there either. So just put shorts on them.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I was off on my own, like trying to logic this out, even though it's not the kind of movie that needs that kind of hyper analysis per se.
No, but it does make those like other like the ambassador and whatever that like other alien is that are wearing those robes, it makes them
Hmm.
stand out a lot.
Yeah, costume design nomination where,
Yes.
even on CGI characters.
Hey, it works.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking to that, in the ship, like I love the scene where Sarah Jessica Parker and Pierce Brosnan have been essentially disassembled. And the Martians, like, again, like, they just have like a head at some point, but their brains are still functioning. And they have this very like syrupy sweet scene where they're connecting because they were flirting earlier and now they're like deepening their connection. Meanwhile, her head is attached to her dog's body.
Yes.
And his head is fully separated from his body, which like so stupid but so incredibly Tim Burton. I love it so much, that goofiness, because it's so uncanny and weird, but also like oddly sweet at the same time, which is a great, like, that's what I loved from Tim Burton at that time, was that weird surrealness but mixed in with the sweetness too.
Yeah, that is the section of the movie that does feel so much like Tim Burton because obviously
Yeah.
this movie is contemporary, and so you don't really get like the that gothic aesthetic with this film that he's usually known for, but tonally you can see it seep in, and I do think that yes, a disembodied head falling in love with another human head attached to a dog's body, that just feels so unbelievably strange that it could only exist in a Tim Burton film and exist in a way that yes does take that romance with some sincerity. I mean, I think ultimately, winking at the audience, knowing like, yes, this is
Right.
ridiculous, but
Of
also
course.
understanding that there is an endearing factor at play between these two characters. And I think that Tim Burton is the kind of person who would find sweetness in a more so like dark and disturbing scenario when you actually are looking at it. And that very much feels like his sensibility.
Right. Yeah. It's just strange to feel that like weird sense of like, oh, they're connecting even in the midst of all this chaos, and even how they look now, like they'll still find each other.
Yeah, and they
I
get a
don't know.
big
It's
send
just,
off death at the end of the movie
they
too.
do.
That's like weirdly
Right.
emotional. Like it really is.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like I forgot a little bit about that plot line because I hadn't seen it in quite a while, but I was just like, oh, kind of struck by that. Um, I also love the design of the Martian who is dressed as a human woman,
Yes.
who is played by Burton's partner at the time, Lisa Marie, who had played Vampira in Ed Wood recently. She has that huge blonde wig, just comically huge, and those like odd proportions, kind of like a blow up doll aesthetic. Which actually, like, that kind of, even on this watch, I feel like I connected that to earlier when like the alien is like looking at the Playboy.
Yeah,
And it made
exactly.
me think of like, is that what they think humans love, is like that kind of aesthetic? So they kind of created this costume out of it. But they think this will naturally attract Martin Short's character, which we've established he likes to pick up women, sex workers, and just very easily provides access to the White House. Before, of course, she reveals her true form. I adore that sequence. I remember that very distinctly from watching it early on.
Yeah, I do too. That look of her in the movie
Yeah.
is just so striking. And yeah, I do like how it is like a throwback aesthetic, from the 60s and it just stands out so much. And it's weird to say, but it might be my favorite appearance of Lisa Marie in his movies, which is strange to say because she doesn't say anything. I feel a little bad about saying that, but she just has such a striking image to her. Like it
Mm-hmm.
immediately, like when you think about this movie, I think that character absolutely. I mean, she's on the poster of the
On the
film.
poster, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a reason why it's so kind of iconic within the framework of this movie. And yeah, Martin Short being there too is just he's a delight as well. I think it's
Yeah.
another element that I think back on, wow, high-ranking White House officials just inviting random people in just so that they can hook up. Don't think
Hmm.
that seems so far-fetched these days anymore, I think that
Yeah.
seems rather
None
plausible
of this
now.
does.
Yeah, which is it's so sad, but it
Yeah.
does have a very, very fun dynamic between them. And I think Martin Short is also like he can make so much work with very little, and I love their scenes
Yeah.
together. And when it becomes like rather serious when she bites his finger off, like I actually do find that to be rather disturbing, like how quickly the tone
Yeah.
does change there, and it's very, very effective.
Yeah. It really is. And in that scene where she goes to the president and the first lady's bedroom, like that, just like the violation there is just like how easy that is for her to just access the president.
Yeah,
Um, Maybe think of January 6th a little bit. But
yeah.
yeah, So the Martian is ultimately killed by the Secret Service, and that's where they really kind of take this as an act of war and descend upon the White House the following day. So we get even more chaos. The aliens chasing everyone around the White House, Glenn included. The way she just like bulges her eyes and like is whipping her head back and forth is so funny to me. And like, of course, when they have their ray guns and they shoot the chandelier. And the way
Yeah.
she fully is clenching her body in that moment is so funny. And that clipped line reading, her famous last words, if you want to do the honors.
My Nancy Reagan chandelier.
Yes, Nancy Reagan chandelier.
Yes.
Just like that, like shock is amazing. So that's obviously
Yeah.
it for her. There's still like a half hour left of the movie, but it's just absolutely one of the best exits in the film by far.
Oh yeah, as I said, so many of the things that I recall from this movie involve her, and that absolutely is one. Yes, once again, the Reagans are always at the scene of the crime. There's something bad that happens in the world. It can be traced back to the Reagans. Always, it's a golden rule for me. Yeah, but it is
Yeah.
a marvelous, marvelous exit. As is Jack Nicholson screaming "Marsher" as he is running up to her. It's also another great button to that moment. Yes. But yeah, her
Yeah.
expressions throughout that entire sequence is just gold. How it is just so committed to being as broad as possible, but it works within the chaos. And there's another great moment as they're trying to escape when she points to another room and asks if they can go out that way. And then the security guard just says, "No, you can't go through here. There's a tour happening," which and they just move on. Like they don't. Maybe my favorite joke in the whole movie, the fact that they just say,
It's
"Oh
so
no, there's a
funny.
tour going on," and they just keep going, and then the tour just keeps happening. Like it's so funny to me.
Yeah, one of my favorite recurring gags because there's one like that earlier in the film too.
Yeah.
So funny. Just so much great payoff with this storyline, I think. Because yeah, she is ultimately crushed by the design of previous first ladies.
Yes,
So there's some beautiful irony in that. And Glenn herself has said very simply, to be crushed by the Nancy Reagan chandelier was just delicious.
I agree with
She
her.
adored working on this movie. So yeah, I mean, from there, they just fully further escalate things, blowing up every major monument. They turn the Mount Rushmore into Martian heads. There are a few gags in there that are like approaching a little too broad for me, like when the aliens are like taking a picture at the Taj Mahal as it's being blown up, or like
Yeah.
that they're when they're high-fiving in the ship that feels kind of like juvenile. Just like there's those little sequences for me where they're kind of like mimicking human behavior in a way. I know it's kind of overthinking, but it does take me out a little bit. It just feels like, remember like in Ants when they're like, "You to ant," like that's kind of
Yeah.
like how it feels. Like that specific 90s, I don't know, corny humor that I don't always love. But
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels like kind of a modern sensibility to comedy at that point, and sort of
yes,
inserting it where it doesn't really
exactly.
belong. Because most of the humor doesn't really feel like it's rooted in, cultural references or anything like that. It feels pretty universal. But yeah, I think in that montage in particular, that's when you do get some not quite as effective comedic moments. I do think that montage maybe goes on just a little bit too long. Like we kind of
Yeah,
understand what all
we
the
get it.
destruction, but I do think there are sections where it feels a little drawn out, and I think that is when it starts to happen. But I do think that there are still great gags in the movie. One of my favorites is
Hmm.
what they do with the Washington Monument. This is another one of my favorite bits, particularly because it is also specifically referencing another movie, which is Earth versus the Flying Saucers, that also does
Hmm.
something with the Washington Monument in that film, and I am convinced that that was the reference point
Yeah.
of it. But I always love it when they go to destroy it, and then the Boy Scouts are walking by, and they run in one direction, and then the saucer moves it to fall in the direction that they're heading towards. Like I love
Hmm.
that. I weirdly sort of wish that actually had crushed them, but again, I'm a sicko, so I think that actually would have made
Wow.
it even funnier. But I understand they probably were like, no, we can't actually have it crushing Boy Scouts. But I thought it would have been funny.
Yeah, I mean they kill a few animals in here, so I don't know. Like,
Yep, they killed the dog, which I
yeah,
feel like people would get more offended by that than the Boy Scouts
very
getting
much
killed,
so.
honestly.
Exactly. Yep. Yep, but also that was part of one of the more graphic original trading cards had that of the Martians killing a dog, which is part of what was so controversial about them at the time. So,
Yeah.
but yes, just the climax being how Sylvia Sidney in the nursing home is listening to her tunes and just blissfully unaware of how the world has completely been destroyed. Yeah, listening to her Indian love call in particular is what explodes the Martians' heads. This actually made me think of A Quiet Place down the line, which also felt like a similar discovery of like, oh, we know how to kill the little alien creatures in that. But for me, this is a much more fun movie to watch in that regard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. And I do think that just having that be the way to defeat the Martians is sort of like perfect because you are watching and it's like, okay, what is the thing that will take them down? And there's always like some brilliant discovery that's made just sort of by happen chance, and that is the thing
right.
that does it. And the fact that it is this song and we just go with it, it's like perfect. No notes. It absolutely works for this material.
Yeah. And also just the individual song itself, I think is like a smart choice because there's a particular sound to it that like the frequency, like the high frequency of it, like it sort of makes sense that like this would be a
Yeah.
song that could kill them, if you know what I mean. It's not just any old song.
Exactly. And it's not like a cheap joke of, oh, it's like, heavy metal music that, the older people wouldn't be into or something like that,
Right.
or a
Yeah.
rap song or something. Like, no, you're right. The sort of tone of that song feels like something that would cause that reaction. Like you said, the frequency of his singing, like the way that it starts with that like
Yeah.
yodel, you
Right.
understand like, okay, like I get it. I sort of understand why this song would be the reason why it would have like an effect on them without necessarily being like a modern joke to put down like a whole like genre of music. It feels just very specific to this song and not even like it is sort of making fun of the song, but in a way that makes sense in this movie and why you would take it seriously as a means to defeat the Martians.
Exactly. And I think by the end, like, we do get plenty more kills. Like, we do get the president being killed, we get his general being killed. And again, I just really love how it's not repetitive. It's not the same thing of just like they're shooting them with the ray guns and that's it. Like, they shrink the general at the end to where he's just kind of like yelling and screaming, but he's all pint sized now. Or with the president, they do like a fake handshake that kills him. So, like, again, I just appreciate the creativity of these Martians that they're just like, we're not just gonna kill them and that's it. Like, we're gonna have a little fun with them, torture them a little bit.
Yeah, and that scene in particular was another one that really stayed in my mind. Like I
Mm-hmm.
would honestly, like as a kid, reenact that scene because I used to do that a lot when I would watch movies. I would just reenact moments, and that was one I always used to do. Just that image of him being shrunk was also like kind of unnerving to me, and the fact that you could
Yeah.
just step on him like as a child, that really stayed with me. And yeah, the president's whole speech trying to get on the Martian side, like I can recite that verbatim. I'm not going to do that right now, but I
Wow.
have seen the movie enough that I know that speech pretty much word for word. And yeah, the fact
Hmm.
that he gets taken out with, being stabbed in the back with that fake hand. And yeah, it left a huge impact on me. And that is one of the scenes that I often think about with this movie.
Yeah. It's very clear that Tim Burton just had an absolute blast filming this. Yeah, by the end we get to Sylvia Sidney being like awarded by Natalie Portman because her parents have died.
Yes.
Uh
And that's how that
this sort
works,
of
right?
yes, that's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
But again, I just want to reiterate the point that like Sylvia Sidney, old Hollywood star, in her final film role at the end of her final movie, she is being awarded with like this presidential medal by Natalie Portman.
We should all be so
It's
lucky.
right? Yes. What a blessed life, what a blessed career. So yeah, it's just a really just entertaining movie for me from start to finish. And it really made me think again of like how this movie would be made today. I think it would be over explaining things. It would be trying to make points that were more verbose and much more speeches about what it all means. I thought quite a bit about Don't Look Up on this rewatch and how I
Yeah.
feel like that was kind of this for like our like this generation, this decade. And I think to less I don't love that movie. I don't think you do either.
Nope.
But it's just like we don't need to be like sanctimonious and trying to make these self-righteous points about these things. Like we can just kind of have fun with it and we could still sort of get the general message of how frightening and like existential this kind of a threat could be to humanity.
Yeah, and it can make that point about like how, yes, dangerous that threat can be, also how ineffective our government can be to combat that too. I think that you can find those points in the movie, but it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be so serious about it. Like it understands like it's making those points within a rather silly context, which you can also make the argument that even those old sci-fi movies were doing the exact same thing. Like, yeah, they were B films that were just churned out very quickly, but so many of them are about a giant government apparatus that wants to have so much control over your individual life, but when faced with this existential terror, may not be totally willing to fight it in a particular way. And knowing that
Right.
most of those movies came out of the Cold War era, like feels
Mhm.
very relevant to that time and place too. So, I mean, that's always a great thing about these types of movies. And I think particularly with like science fiction and horror is that there is such an easy route to kind of dismiss them for being like cheap and disposable, but there actually is something politically to say underneath them that is fascinating that you can kind of easily overlook just because of the kind of movie that it is.
Yeah, it's true. And that, and they do that quite a bit in some of the Godzilla movies too, showing
Hmm.
how ineffectual the government is against this big existential threat. So,
Yeah.
yes,
And Godzilla makes an appearance in Mars Attacks.
that's true. Yes. So,
Another
really,
great
such a
gag in the
star-studded
movie.
cast.
Yeah.
So, any other stray observations you wanted to make on Mars Attacks that
Yes,
we didn't talk
there
about?
are a few. One,
Okay.
we didn't talk a ton about Annette Bening. I do like her in the
Yeah.
movie. I do think that she is rather fun. Again, somebody else that can make a lot with a little. But I also
Mm.
like it for the fact that, as you know, and maybe some other people do, that Annette Bening was originally supposed to play Catwoman in Batman Returns. So I like
Yes.
that she ended up working with
Good
Tim
point.
Burton on this film. And there is a shot in the casino with her and Danny DeVito standing next to each other. And I immediately thought like, oh, there it is. There's the collaboration that we were supposed to get. And now it
Wow.
is come to fruition in this movie. So I did chuckle at myself for that because I liked seeing the two of them together and being reminded of how this was supposed to happen, even though I think we all agree Michelle Pfeiffer worked out
Yeah.
really well, but it was
Right.
nice to think about that previous casting and how it all kind of came together for this one moment in this movie. I liked that.
Yeah. Wow. I have to go back and look at that shot because,
Yeah,
yeah, it really could have been like a what could have been.
yeah.
And I noticed she's using her kind of higher register in this film as well. Like we're so used to now hearing her with that kind of like kids are all right kind of
Yeah.
voice, if you know what I'm saying, or Naiad, obviously. But like this is when she was like at that grifter's level of just like that super high, almost like airhead kind of voice that she had in the early 90s. And that even started to go away with American Beauty. So yeah, playing a fun little hippy dippy character here.
Yeah, she's very good. Speaking of connections to other Burton movies, I would also have to mention Tom Jones
Oh,
because,
yeah.
especially because that song shows up in Edward Scissorhands, and I remember I
Right.
saw Mars Attacks before I saw Edward Scissorhands, so I remember watching Edward Scissorhands and feeling like, oh wow, that's the song from Mars Attacks, and that singer. Of course, I also have like the Bond connection because he sang Thunderball, so a lot of stuff kind of colliding in
Wow.
this movie in terms
Yeah.
of things that, again, like this movie is so important. It really is like the linchpin for so many things in my life. So, but Tom Jones
Fascinating.
also like very fun
As
and
himself.
a
Yeah.
good, like nice, fun cameo. And I like that he can just fly a plane when it's necessary for the end of the movie. And we just accept it. I don't know if that's true or not, probably not, but it's okay. Like it's great. I love his little bit, and he's
Yeah.
being chased by the Martians. It's fun. I really like Tom Jones in the film.
Absolutely. And like there's that undercurrent of a little more serious of a plot line too with Jim Brown and Pam Grier
Hmm.
and how like I feel like some of that might have been left on the cutting room floor with in terms of fully exploring that aspect where they're like this separated couple and they have kids and kind of like they're trying to get back to that nuclear family by the end essentially. So
Yeah, I
nice
mean
to see Pam Grier here like before she does
absolutely.
Jackie Brown the next year.
Yeah, I mean it's always great to see Pam Grier. I
Yeah.
love that scene when she finds her kids, when she's driving the bus too. I love that
Yeah.
moment and when she marches them on the bus and tells them to sit down and shut up, and then the whole bus applauds too. That's
Yes.
another like great little joke in the
Hmm.
movie. That's one of my favorites. Also, one of her sons played by Ray J,
Hey,
which
like I
know
said,
that.
what what a cast.
Yes, I mean Ray J can tell stories about how he shared a screen with Jack Nicholson. Crazy to think.
Well, that's yeah. It's so many connections this movie provided.
Yeah.
Um,
I do have one other thing that I want to mention.
yeah.
And it is, I actually want to give you a small quiz. I don't know if anybody's ever done this to you before,
Wow.
but
Okay.
don't, but
Sure.
I will say this. It's only one question because when I think about this movie, like, and movies in general that have like really big casts in them, I don't know if you do this, but I always play the game of who is an Oscar winner slash nominee in this cast. It's one of my favorite things to do,
Oh,
especially when there's a ton of people in it. And I wanted you to guess who they are. And now I will say this.
who they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are 9 people in this cast
Oh,
who
okay.
currently, not at the time of the movie, but
Right.
currently are either Oscar winners or nominees. And I wanted to know if you could name all of them. I think most of these are gettable. There's one that I think is kind of impossible, which I'd be very impressed if
Okay.
you can get, but I wanted to see if you could because I love playing this game.
So nominees doesn't have to be winners,
The nominees and
right?
winners. So like if they have been
Nominees
nominated
and
for an
winners.
Oscar
Right.
or
Okay.
won,
Okay.
that counts. There's 9 of them.
Okay. Well, Jack Nicholson,
Yep.
Glenn Close,
Mm-hmm.
Annette Bening,
Right.
Danny DeVito
Yes, that
as
sneaky
a
producer
producer,
nomination. Yep.
Rod Steiger, Natalie Portman.
Yep.
That's 6.
Hmm.
So, okay. Unfortunately, not Pam Grier. Should
Yeah,
have
I
been.
know.
Let me think. Oh my God, there's so many storylines.
I know.
Sylvia Sidney, obviously.
Yep, Sylvia
So
Sidney.
that's 7. Oh God. Not Martin Short.
No.
Not Pierce Brosnan. Not Sarah Jessica. Not Michael J. Fox. Or
No, not
maybe.
Lisa
I
Marie.
mean,
No.
not Lisa Marie. Just kind of doing a process of elimination here at this point.
Yeah.
Um, hmm.
One is related to Rod Steiger. I'll give you that clue.
Related to Rod Steiger.
Like his
Hmm.
storyline with the
Right. Oh, okay.
military.
Oh boy.
You want me to give it to you?
At least a hint. More of a hint.
Well, he was nominated in the 70s. I will say that. And it's a male. So it's
Right.
like a one of the military people.
Oh, right. Okay. Uh,
Involved when the Martians first land in the desert.
Paul Winfield.
Yep, yep.
Okay. And now I feel like I'm not going to get whatever the other one
No,
is.
you're not going to get this. So I'm just going to give this to you because honestly,
Okay.
I didn't know this until I looked it up. And it's also the reason why I wanted to ask this because I found it to be very fascinating. And it works to be the last person too, and you'll see. Because the scene when Jack Nicholson as the president is talking to the president of France who thinks he has struck a deal and he tells him to get out and then they all get killed, which is another very fun scene. The
Hmm.
president of France is played by Barbet Schroeder, who you may
Oh my
know
God.
as the person who
As the
received a
director
Best
of Reversible
Director
Fortune.
nomination for Reversal of Fortune, starring
Good
Glenn
Lord.
Close.
Wow. That is incredible.
Yeah. I didn't even know that until I was
I
looking
didn't
up
know
who was
that
in the
at all.
movie. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait, Barbie Schroeder, that is wild to me that he is in this
Yeah.
movie.
I can't say that I knew what he looked like, so
I
that
didn't
makes it
either.
tough. But
Yeah, but I was just
wow,
looking at the cast and I saw
that's
his
so funny.
name and I never knew that that was him. And it's like, oh, well, another Oscar nominee in the cast.
That's wild. Wow, that was fun. I liked that.
Yeah,
So, unless we have anything else, we can move on to the release of the film.
I think so.
Um,
Yeah.
Okay, so Mars Attacks opened at the end of the year. It was a holiday release coming out on December 13th, 1996. Apparently, Josh was one of the people who saw it in
Yep.
that holiday season.
I remember the
Uh,
Christmas decorations being up around the city at that time too. So like that's
there
another
you
reason
go.
why it sticks in my mind because I was like in the holiday spirit to watch an alien
Mars
invasion
Attacks,
movie. Yeah.
a Christmas movie.
Yes,
Yep.
makes sense.
It came in at number 2 that weekend behind Jerry Maguire, which was also opening in its first week. But it's also worth noting that Glenn was having quite a moment in time at the box office with 101 Dalmatians coming in at number 3 in its third week of release, which just edged out the other new release that weekend, The Preacher's Wife, at number 4. So moviegoers saw quite a bit of Glenn being goofy in December of 1996.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah, for real. And in total, Mars Attacks made $101 million worldwide, which was considered a box office bomb.
Yeah, because it was very
Uh,
expensive to make. It was like $100 million movie. So yeah,
yeah,
that's a
yeah.
bomb.
Yep. And also had a bit of a mixed reception from critics as well, many of them finding it a bit superficial and maybe not as fun as it could have been. But there was some appreciation of Tim Burton's kind of throwback style from other critics. So a bit lukewarm from box office and critics. Definitely not what people were intending with this movie. But with awards, it was well received by the Saturn Awards and the Satellite Awards. Glenn also got a nomination for Best Sci-Fi Fantasy Horror Actress from the Online Film and Television Association. So
All right, we'll take it.
we'll take it. So any thoughts from you on like why you feel Mars Attacks didn't quite live up to the potential, why it had a bit of a tepid response, at least at the time?
Well, you watch it, and I do think that a lot of people, kind of in the general audience, may not fully appreciate the tone that it's going for. Like, it is
Yeah.
goofy and weird and dark in some places, and I just think that mixture can be difficult for some people. I also don't think it helped that this is the same year as Independence Day, which is a much
Yeah.
more rousing, crowd-pleasing kind of alien invasion movie, and for this to come out a couple months later also around Christmas is like weird timing too. So it
Yeah.
doesn't shock me that this movie struggled to find an audience because it's a weird movie coming out at a weird time. And yeah, I think that it is difficult to register with a lot of people because of that, which is unfortunate because I do think it's a fun movie, but I just think timing and the kind of movie that it is and the amount of money they spent on it just were not factors that helped it.
Right. And I also just think it's possible it was like a frequency thing. Like it's a very specific tone that he's going for here. And that feels like a throwback and it's kind of silly, but maybe not cool in a way that like worked for Independence Day, like you said, or like for just the general sensibility of what audiences in the 90s were looking for, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's pretty niche, honestly. Like
Yeah,
what it's
exactly.
talking about, what it's referencing and sending up. Like if you have an appreciation for that, like it really does work. But I don't know how many general audience members like love 50s sci-fi movies and also like the star-studded disaster movies too. There's a bit of that as
Yeah.
well. Like there's a whole kind of throwback sensibility, but to something that is so specific that I don't really know how much that is working for a large group of people out there. And I do think that that contributes to the movie struggling to find a wider audience. It is absolutely like kind of a cult hit now. But I can understand at the time, yeah, it's pretty difficult to know where that audience was going to come from back in 96.
Right. So I think there are also just a lot of other options at the box office too at the time
Yeah.
with, a little more warmer and family friendly even types of films that Like I said, 101 Dalmatians. There was Jerry Maguire for the adult crowd that really kind of, I think that kind of ate up a lot of the attention for those more mature audiences, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it just is a struggle to find that audience that maybe is not in the mood for a weird, darkly comedic alien invasion movie. But apparently
yeah,
I was at 6 years old, so I will be grateful always for that. But
exactly.
if for nothing else, it might have been a bomb, but I'm at least grateful that it was in theaters for me to see it and make the impact that it did, at least on me.
Yeah. And I mean, don't you think it deserves some Oscar nominations? Because it got nothing.
I mean, I definitely think that, I think the intentionality with the visual effects is interesting because you can make the argument that they're not like the most polished, but that's sort of the point. And I do sort of like at least visual effects going for something that maybe doesn't look like so state of the art, but has an artistic perspective behind it. I do appreciate that. I also think that Danny Elfman's score is very good.
Hmm.
I do really like it, and especially during this era when they were splitting up score between drama and comedy, it's like, you know, I think it would have been a perfect nominee there. I would have not had any issue with it at all because it's another piece of the movie that feels very much like throwback with the kind of music that it is employing, but works so well within in the film. Like I think about that theme constantly when I'm thinking about this movie, and it's maybe not my favorite Danny Elfman score in a Burton film, but I still really like it.
Yeah. I think I maybe would have nominated it. I love that opening theme during the credits.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, visual effects, I think, could have happened. I think sound effects editing would have been a fine
Hmm.
nomination.
The ack, the Martian language. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The even makeup and hairstyling, if you want, for like Glenn and what she's got going on with her hair, and Annette
Yeah.
Bening too. Like a lot of
Or the
great
Lisa
work
Marie
there.
character, that
Lisa
that
Marie,
alien
certainly.
creature, yeah, in
Yeah.
disguise.
And costume design, Colleen Atwood,
Well,
like
yeah, frequent Burton
should have been a
collaborator.
layup.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, a lot of the similar nominations that I said that 101 Dalmatians should have gotten from that very same year.
Yeah.
So either way, I think both of the big Glenn movies from this year, I'm excluding Mary Riley, deserved a little more attention, I think, from the Oscars.
I think so. I completely understand why Mars Attacks did not make an impact with
Of
the
course.
Oscars. Like I am
Yeah.
very much understanding of that, but I think there are plenty of craft elements in that movie that deserved recognition, even if the movie
Hmm.
itself wasn't so warmly received.
Okay, well, let's get to our last segment where we're going to rate Glenn's performance on a very specific scale, thinking about her performance and where this sits in her career. Would you say her performance as Marcia Dale is such that she's ready for her close up, one of her best performances? Is it low Glenergy, not one of your faves, not an essential watch, or close but no cigar, somewhere in the middle?
I think ultimately I would have to say Close But No Cigar. Like I really do like her in the film, and she's very
Yeah.
fun. I don't think I can reasonably say that this is one of her best performances. Like I just don't think that the size of the role demands that. And I like the energy that she brings to it for sure, but is it really like the top tier of what I know she is capable of? Like, no. And I think she
No,
would also say the same thing. Like, this is a very fun movie to be a part of. It's not a very big role itself. It comes in and makes the impact that it needs to. And that's good. And I enjoy it. But I'm gonna be realistic that even though I really like her in the movie, I would never
of course.
hold it up to that high of a pedestal.
Yeah, same for me. This is close but no cigar pretty easily. Really fun performance, but to your point, like it's barely a character when you
Yeah.
really stop and break it down. So she can really only do so much. But, I feel like this is another supporting character from Glenn where I can sort of see the kind of person that she was before we see her in the film, like how she got to this point in her life. So, like, I feel like that counts for something, but it's not quite in classic territory by any means. And so, even though it's a small performance, I also certainly wouldn't call it low Glenergy by any means,
No, absolutely
if
not.
only for her line delivery on the Nancy Reagan chandelier.
Yes.
So, this was such a blast, Josh, getting to talk to you about this formative movie experience for you. So, I'm glad that our interests intersected for this.
Yes, I'm very happy because this movie really does mean so much to me. Like it is kind of crazy how much of my personality is sort of attached to this movie and how much it is the launching pad for so many other interests of mine. And like I genuinely tell people like when I talk about this movie that it is very important to me. And I don't say that ironically. You know, there's a lot of movies that you see when you're younger that you grow up and you realize they're not that great. And it's like, you know, it's still important to me because I liked it when I was a kid. But this is a movie that literally is the starting point for so many things that are integral to my personality and my interests of today. And even though they have changed and evolved over the years, like I still return to that moment when I was 6 years old and my parents went into the city and took their family to go see this movie and just being completely transfixed by it. And my life genuinely changed after that. So it really is one of the most defining movies that I have seen in my life, and it means an incredible deal to me.
Beautiful. That's lovely. So it may have been a box office bomb, but we have Mars Attacks to thank for Josh Parham, and we can all be thankful for that.
I certainly
So,
am.
yes. Well, where can people find more of you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Letterboxd at JR Parham, and you can also find my work at Next Best Picture and over at Awards Watch.
Yes, highly recommend following Josh. I'm sure a vast majority of people listening already have, but, give him some likes, give him some retweets. He always appreciates that.
Especially during this time of the award season. Like, I could use some
Yes.
encouragement.
Now more than ever.
Yes.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for listening. You can find me at Kevin_Jacobsen on Twitter and Instagram, just Kevin Jacobsen on Blue Sky. You can also listen to my Oscar-themed podcast, And the Runner-Up Is, for coverage of every single Best Actress race, including 2 with Josh here, talking 1962 and 1993, which were both super fun episodes. And that's And the Runner-Up Is on all platforms. And keep up with the world according to Glenn on social. Go to The Glenn Pod and follow, rate, review the podcast on all podcast platforms. And with that, I will bid you all adieu.